Down year is an understatement.
Yeah.
I think I took a brief look and it was like Vanderbilt's higher and like all these
I made a list. I made a list of
All
teams
right.
that are higher than Purdue. We've got Rutgers, Cincinnati, Memphis, SMU, Central Florida.
Hello and welcome back to the Fourth and Long-Winded Podcast. This is episode number 4. My name is Dan, and with me, as always, is Cody. Cody, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, except my bracket's feeling pretty busted today.
Yeah,
Illinois really hurt me.
I think everybody's feeling that way.
I'll never trust them.
Texas ended up hurting me pretty bad on Saturday night.
One's down.
Yeah, what's that? You see the Abilene Christian player immediately?
Yeah.
He immediately
I enjoyed that. And I liked that TCU tweeted at Abilene Christian, like, hey, good job.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid. Purple Christian teams from Texas sticking together.
Yeah. All right. On today's show, we're going to get into the second episode in our State of the Conference series. Today, we're just going to narrow it down to the Big Ten West because the SEC episode went a little long. We're trying to keep it a little shorter, so we're just going to do the Big Ten West today. But before that, I want to touch on a couple of news items from this past week. Don't have as many as in the past, just two. Drew Brees, it was announced he's going to be co-hosting with Mike Tirico for Notre Dame games on NBC. I have a problem with this as he's a Purdue guy, and now he's going to call Notre Dame games. I mean, it's a contract, so I understand he has to do it, but I don't know. It hurts me a little bit watching. It's going to be watching him call Notre Dame games.
I have a piece of news.
What?
I have a piece of news.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh dang, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, okay, well, I'll let you get your train of thought back, and I'll go to my second news topic.
All right.
The ACC is going to allow in-conference transfers to be immediately eligible. That was a news story that came out in the past week.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so I think it was they instilled a rule in the 90s that if you wanted to transfer to another ACC school, you had to sit out for a year. But obviously, with the times changing, they have decided to switch that policy, and I think it's a good idea because if this transfers have become such a big thing, it's a yearly off-season topic, and I think the ACC is smart to do this because you incentivize your players to stay in the conference at least, because you'll get to play immediately. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I like that. Did you think of?
Yeah. Okay. I remember what it was.
All right.
Our boy Dion lost his first game yesterday.
Yeah, I did see that.
Unfortunately, I was 35-28 on a hell of a long run at Alabama State.
Yeah.
So he is no longer undefeated. He's now has the 75% win percentage. Still not bad.
Not bad. It's his first year. It's all right.
All right. Well, you want to get into this Big Ten West conversation, Dan?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I figure we should probably start. I kind of did a list just based on recruiting rankings based off the 2021 class and how each team did. So we can kind of go in that order. So unfortunately, that means that we're probably going to be starting with the worst team as recruiting wise, which would be Purdue.
Yeah,
my friend.
Yep.
So they are ranked 75th nationally, which is rough. You have on the 24/7 recruiting composite website, you have to click load more to get to their number, which is usually an indication that it's a down year.
A down year is an understatement.
Yeah.
I think I took a brief look and it was like Vanderbilt's higher and like all these.
I made a list. I made a list of teams that are higher than Purdue. We've got Rutgers, Cincinnati, Memphis, SMU, Central Florida, San Diego State University, Wake Forest, Toledo, UTSA. Rough time to be a Purdue fan.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on Purdue right now, obviously. Conflicting. I don't know how to feel right now, honestly, because I think I mentioned on this podcast before that I was in favor of firing Brown. I've softened on that since then, as we've gotten further away from the 2020 season. Basically because it's a hell of a lot better than it was under Hazel.
It's fair.
I don't know. I looked over the history of the last 20 years, even with Joe Tiller, the legendary Joe Tiller. And Purdue football has really never been great. And I think this day and age where you see everybody wants to be Alabama, everybody wants to be Clemson, but it's just not realistic as a Purdue fan. And you need to realize sometimes that's just our place in this world right now. And maybe we're never going to be a football team that's Ohio State or even Indiana right now. but this is probably more a Purdue fan that's just in denial right now.
So I think there's no reason that Purdue couldn't compete for a Big Ten West title.
See, that's the only upside. The Big Ten West is the word probably.
It's weak. And so here's the thing about the Big Ten West. All the schools are relatively small in comparison to the East. The student population is just generally smaller. Their endowments are generally smaller. So you get generally less money, right? But Purdue just finished building a new football facility, and it's fantastic. That's going to be a great recruiting tool that, teams like SMU, like UCF, like San Diego State, that you're competing with them for recruits, they're not going to have that. Even looking at like Cincinnati doesn't have that nice of a facility. So, and those are the kind of recruits that you're competing for is that level of recruit. So I think when you look at that, that's going to help some in recruiting. I think that they made some really good stadium upgrades. Installing the lights was a good thing for the stadium. And honestly, the stadium itself is a very nice stadium. It's older.
I love it.
But it's a very nice stadium.
I love when
it's packed, it looks. I mean, it's one of the toughest places to play. So, I actually think that Purdue is better than their rankings. I think that obviously being in Indiana, you have to compete with Notre Dame, you have to compete with Indiana, but then you also have to compete with Ohio State, Northwestern, a lot of other schools that are trying to pick schools out of it, or players out of Indiana.
Yeah.
So they're in a tough spot, but there's no reason that here in the next couple of years they couldn't be competing for a Big Ten West title. And I honestly think that's what the goal for Purdue should be.
I think it should be, but I think we've taken a step back these past 2 years. I think part of the reason I was so quick to be like, all right, Brom needs to be fired is one, there was a couple coaching decisions toward the end of this past season that I was not okay with. We had two of the best receivers in the entire country that just were not used as two of the best receivers in the country, and David Bell and Rondale Moore. I remember one game specifically. I can't tell you exactly who they were playing, but it was the second half, and Rondale Moore and David Bell touched the ball like 3 times combined in the second half. And so there's some play call issues I have with Jeff Brom. But I think the main problem that I had was it started off so well.
And then
we were 7. Yeah, and it's fallen off pretty precipitously. And it's pretty much because of the quarterback play. We had David Blau for 2 seasons, who was really, really good. Like going back and looking at some of his statistics, I think we kind of underrated David Blau a little bit. But they went 7-6, and then they went 6-7 his first 2 years. They made bowl games both years. Had a win over Ohio State that is probably gonna suffice for me for the next 5-10 years. I could probably just live off of that win.
Yeah.
Um, but we wasted Rondell Moore. I understand he was hurt and opted out and then opted back in, but he's going to the draft now, and he was one of the best wide receivers in the country, and we really only got one full season out of him.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think that providing there's no real turmoil at Purdue, there's a good chance that Brom turns this around. I do think that he is a pretty good developer of players, more so than, needing to recruit these guys that are 5 stars out of the gate. I think he develops players well. And maybe it is right. Maybe he needs to find the right play calling. People on his assistants that can help him with play calling. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe he'll figure it out. I'm hoping
he needs to find a defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really all I have for Purdue. I think that, obviously they are 14th in the Big Ten, so there's nowhere to go but up for recruiting.
Yeah.
I don't think they finished last in the standings.
No, they were tied with Illinois for wins. They both had 2 wins, but Illinois played 2 more games and lost. So Illinois was 2-6, Purdue was 2-4. So
okay. Yeah, well, you don't play games, you don't lose them.
Yeah, I guess so. We definitely would have lost the 2 games. I think they were canceled because it was the Indiana game was canceled.
Ooh,
and I think it was I can't remember.
It doesn't matter.
No, we would have lost it anyways. No, it was a Wisconsin game. It was Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
It was Wisconsin.
That's rough going. All right, so do you want to go ahead and move on to the next team?
Yeah. I'm going to be in a bitter mood for the rest of this because we started off with Purdue, of course. But
well, at least you can make fun of the next team.
Can I really? They're better recruiting than we are.
They
just fired their coach.
They are better in recruiting by 6 places. So they are ranked 69th. So they are still on the second page of the 24/7 recruiting composite. But here's my notes on it. They just built an $80 million facility that opened in 2019. It's a real nice facility. And Brett Bielema, I think it was a good hire. It's a hire that made a lot of sense in my mind. I don't know if it's going to translate because I think that Illinois has a few more problems than Purdue or Indiana that you can't fix by slapping a name brand coach and a new facility in.
They had Lovie Smith for the last 4 years.
Exactly. and he wasn't able to do a goddamn thing. So I don't feel good about Illinois at all. Despite the new facilities, despite the name brand coach, I don't feel good about them. I just don't. You have Northwestern to the north of you that they're better than you objectively over the past few years, and they're raiding Chicago. And if they don't go to Northwestern, guess where they're going? Wisconsin.
Or even Iowa.
Or even Iowa. You are literally, your state is getting raided. And so you're bad. So you've got no
hope, really.
None at all. None at all.
I don't even know where the start, because it's a historically, they've never really been relevant historically in football.
I think they have 2 national championships.
How long ago was that?
Oh, 1,000 years ago.
Exactly.
Before Christ.
I think they I had it here. They made 6 bowl bowl games in the last 20 years.
Ooh, it's rough.
And I think they only made it once under Lovie Smith. So it's basically one time per coach they'll make it.
It's going down.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't feel good about him. Like, despite the Brett Bielema hire, I don't think he did anything at Arkansas. I also don't really think it was his fault at Arkansas. I don't think they gave him a real chance to put in his system. That being said, I think that, Illinois could be the school that he makes some success at. But we'll see. We're gonna see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything to be excited about here.
No. All right. I actually have positive things to say about the next team.
Okay. I think just about, other than one other team, I think everybody else in this is pretty optimistic about.
Yeah. Northwestern. I feel really good about Northwestern, man.
Yeah.
Pat Fitzgerald is he's a wizard. He makes do with a lot less than he should have to.
Yeah.
I mean,
how long do you think he's been the coach there? Just out of curiosity, just off the top of your head.
Is it like 11 years?
15 years.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic.
I mean, yeah, it just doesn't feel like he's been there for 15 years. Like,
yeah. Well, there's something to be said about continuity and like having consistent success at a program, because have they been?
I wouldn't say consistent success. I'd say consistently inconsistent, because if you look past over his entire 15-year run, it's literally like a roller coaster.
Yeah, but consistent success for Northwestern is being above 500 every other year. Like that's for Northwestern historically, that is a consistent success.
Yeah.
And like I'm not comparing that consistent success to like Ohio State, but I am saying like they've been in the 3 of the last 4 Big Ten championships.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty consistent success, if you ask me. Over 4 years.
Yeah, last 4 years.
Over a 4 or 5 year period, that's pretty good, especially considering Wisconsin is considered the better team, and yet you somehow beat them out for it every year. And like considering they have the 49th ranked recruiting class in the nation, the 5th ranked in the West, and the 11th in the Big Ten, and it hasn't been much better.
No, that's pretty much. They've probably been a little bit worse than that, honestly. Over the last
it hasn't been much better in the past few years. Pat Fitzgerald just finds a way to get these guys to play well, and
he's a good coach.
He's an excellent coach. He's a better coach than he is a recruiter, and it makes me think like, what would happen if he got like a couple more 4-star guys? Like
they would be obviously they continue. I think they continue to be Big Ten West favorites, honestly, at that point.
Yeah.
And then they probably sneak into on the outside of the playoff conversation, like not seriously considered, but like
more. But like if they were undefeated going into the Big Ten championship game and then beat Ohio State, we kind of have to put them in kind of team. Yeah. I think that's definitely something. And you also have to like look at Pat Fitzgerald's been there. He has an established program, and he's been able to convince the administration that they need to invest in the program.
Yeah.
So they've got a brand new, I don't know what year it opened, but anything in the last 5 years is brand new lakeside practice facility. That thing is beautiful. Has giant windows that look out across Lake Michigan or Lake Michigan.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's gorgeous. Like who doesn't want to play there? Like I guess if you get offers from Alabama or whatever, but like you're in the Chicago area and you get to go practice there every day.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
And live like 20 minutes away from downtown Chicago. Like
yeah. I mean, you've got a great city. It's relatively great academics, fantastic academics.
Yeah. Which could, we talked about
hurt
this
or could help.
We talked about this in our Michigan conversation about how Michigan's academic standards could be kind of holding them back a little bit.
And that's true. And I think that, but man, it just feels like Northwestern even if they have a bad year next year, like they'll be back. They'll be in the conversation. And I think that's a good thing.
In 2019, they were 3-9. So
Yep.
like every so often they'll have these years where they go 3-9, 2-10, or whatever, finish last. But they always bounce back. So they followed up with a 7-2 season. So
yep. I think that
I think you're happy with where the program is if you're a Northwestern fan right now.
If I'm a Northwestern fan, I'm very happy.
Yeah.
With Pat Fitzgerald. All right. Next, I got Minnesota.
All right.
They are ranked 38th nationally. So a pretty big jump nationally between Northwestern and Minnesota. They're 4th in the West and 8th in the Big Ten. They have 18 total commits, 4 4-star recruits, and 14 3-star recruits. What do you have to say about Minnesota?
I think Minnesota has better hope that this past season is a blip because they were improving. PJ Fleck had improved his record every single year his first 3 years, and then they took a step back this past year. I think he'll be able to turn it around this coming season. I don't think they'll be back to where they were in 2019, where they were like 11-2 and in the playoff conversation even for a little bit. I think Minnesota fans would be perfectly happy winning 8 to 10 games a year, making bowl games consistently in the threat to win the Big Ten West. And I think PJ Fleck can do that unless he gets tempted unless he does a good job and is tempted by a bigger job and moves on. And then they have to start a coaching search all over again, which I think is a possibility.
I think it's a minor possibility. Because when you look at PJ Fleck, there were a lot of jobs that came open that year when he was coached Western Michigan to that undefeated season.
Purdue was one of them.
And he didn't take any of them. There were quite a few people that were after him, and he was like, "No, I don't want to go there. No, I don't want to go there." Like if it wasn't the right fit, he wasn't going to go there. Yeah. And then the Minnesota job came open in like January when their previous coach had health problems and had to retire. Yeah. And then that was the situation where I was like, okay, well, yeah, it makes sense for me to go to that school. And I actually think that Western Michigan and Minnesota comparably are pretty, they're comparably similar when you look at the conference versus conference. I mean, they're not actual similar teams, but Minnesota had been kind of down in the conference for a while.
Yeah.
Western Michigan had never actually been up in the conference. But the athletic departments are both willing to invest money and make the teams better. And Minnesota's done that. I didn't look at their practice facility, but their stadium is almost brand new. It's a really nice stadium. Kind of wish they would have gone with a dome myself, but it also means that they couldn't renovate it and expand it in later times if things get better. Yeah. And it's a very nice stadium. It has a view of downtown from the field, which is pretty freaking nice if you ask me. I don't know. I like PJ Fleck. I think there's opportunity for growth. I also feel like with PJ's Fleck like style of coaching, that if things start going bad, they're gonna get bad quick.
I agree.
Just like that row the boat mentality, that upbeat, always firing on all cylinders kind of thing. That could get like it's great when you're winning. Yeah. But when you're losing, that's gonna get under players' skin. That's gonna get under alumni skin, the AD's skin. Like that's gonna start. I agree. It works when you're winning.
Yeah. I don't really have a lot to add on to that. I think last year was kind of a blip. I think they'll be right back to being a competitive team. So.
I do too. All right. Well, we've gone through 4 of the 7 on the Big Ten West. So let's keep moving. What do you think of Iowa? And then I'll give you my piece.
Iowa's just kind of there, aren't they? Like they're not really exciting. They seem to always be ranked like 21st, like consistently. Kirk Ferentz is a good coach. I mean, I don't think you could say he's a bad coach. Had a threat of him being fired. What this was it before? Was it last off season or was it? Yeah, I guess it would have been.
Yeah, and then it kind of continued. And he's
Yeah.
also in this offseason.
Yeah. But I think he's just so entrenched in that Iowa program that it's going to take a lot to get him fired. And like 5 straight years of terrible football or something so egregious that the university just like, okay, we have to fire you.
Yeah. So my thing with Iowa is I feel like I always have a problem with coaches that don't put their players first. And I get that some players can be like a little bit whiny and like, coach, this coach coached me too hard, or like this coach is being too hard on me, kind of thing. But the strength and conditioning guy that ended up getting hired at Jacksonville, there was just like quite a few complaints about him, and I don't understand why they didn't just say goodbye. Like, I get strength and conditioning is important, but strength and conditioning coaches are a dime a dozen.
Yeah, I think Kirk Ferentz just has that amount of power there. Like if he would have wanted to fire him, he would have been fired. Like,
yeah, well, yes, and that's what I'm saying is like, if he would have wanted to fire him, he would have fired him. And why didn't he? Like, why don't you care?
I think it says something about Kirk Ferentz and like the person he is. I think that speaks volumes that he didn't come out and publicly like shame the strength and conditioning coordinator. I think it says a lot about him, but at the same time, like I said before, he's got so much power there. Like, why does he need to change who he is, or like?
Yeah. And for context, everyone, the strength and conditioning coordinator at Iowa had some players at Iowa accuse him of making racially insensitive remarks to him. And then he ended up getting hired on at Jacksonville Jaguars by Urban Meyer. And that caused a big upstir at Jacksonville. If you haven't heard about any of this, that was something that happened. And so I just think that that's something to address and talk about with Iowa. Yeah. I think Iowa has developed some really cool traditions, like the wave to the kids. Like that's something that just like you watch it every single week, and every single time it just makes your heart melt. Like it's so cool. The how they built that hospital up there. And I don't know, for like the right player, I think that could be a kind of a recruiting tool. Like, oh, this university cares about that kind of thing. That could be used for that.
I think their biggest recruiting tool is just their system and the fact that they get offensive linemen drafted. They get defensive backs and tight ends drafted. Like,
yeah. Well, and honestly, they're just consistently good.
Yeah. They're not exciting. Good. They're not flashy. They're just consistently above average. I wouldn't even say great. I'd say good every once in a while, because I think they made the Rose Bowl once 4 or 5 years ago. They made the Rose Bowl. But it's not like they have winning seasons. I don't even know the last losing season that Iowa had, or even 500 season. So they're a good program. Yeah. And they're a winning program. But it's not flashy, and they're never going to win a national title, and they're never going to win a playoff game, or as long as the playoff
24th nationally in recruiting, which I think is funny because that coincides with about what they're ranked and what they finish ranked every year. And they're 3rd in the West and 7th overall in the Big Ten. They have 7 4-stars, 12 3-stars.
I'd be curious, are the majority of like the 4-star? I'm sorry, I wasn't completely paying. Did you say they had a 5-star?
No 5 stars.
Are the majority of their 4-stars like offensive linemen and like defensive players? Even if you know that off the top of your head, I'd be curious.
Let's see here. We've got their best enrollee is an offensive tackle. Second best is a guard. Their third, one of their wide receivers is what do you play?
I feel like a wide receiver.
It has him listed as an athlete.
Okay. But still, if you're a wide receiver going to play at Iowa, like
Yeah.
you're not going to get recognized going to play wide receiver there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to go and play in the NFL, like
Yeah. The next three 4-stars are all rated as athletes.
Okay.
So they'll probably put them in different positions.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got on Iowa. I think that they have the potential to maybe win the West every now and then.
They got that shot every single year. Like it's not, I feel like it's not that Iowa's going to go out there and win it and just roll through everybody and win it. It's kind of like, oh, Wisconsin had a really bad year, and oh, Northwestern had a down year, and oh, I guess Iowa was the champion of the Big Ten West this year. It never feels like Iowa ran away with it, or like they're the dominant team.
Right. So next one is something that kind of surprised me. Is Nebraska has the second best recruiting class in the West, which surprised me a little bit, just like with all of the drama that seems to surround Nebraska football.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the 21st ranked recruiting class in the country, second in the West, fifth in the Big Ten. I think that it has something to say about them trying to get out of the game with Oklahoma. I think that game is going to make them look really bad, because Oklahoma is going to be like, all right, you losers, we're going to show you that you're losers. And they're going to score like 100 points, and Nebraska is going to feel hurt. And I think that that's going to hurt them for the rest of the season. I think Nebraska is going to not recover from that game.
Yeah.
So I don't feel good about Nebraska, despite how good the recruiting is.
I'm looking it up now. I just looked it up now. They have had a top 25 recruiting class at 2016 now. They've had it ever since then.
Like, how do you have that good of a recruiting class and be so fucking dog water?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand it. And the thing that I don't really understand is because every year, it seems like going into every single season, everybody hypes Nebraska up.
Yeah.
Like, this is the year. This is the year Nebraska. This is the year they turn it around.
And they're always hyping up one of their quarterbacks.
Yeah,
like
one of their Martinez's or
yeah.
It seems like Martinez has been their quarterback for like the last 10 years.
And it's like, oh, he's a dark horse Heisman candidate. The fuck he is.
No, he isn't.
He's not gonna win a Heisman. Nuts. I don't even think Nebraska has a chance to compete for the Big Ten West at this point.
No. Not where they stand, and honestly, maybe not with Scott Frost as their coach. I think we're going into the fourth year of Scott Frost. A lot of hype went into that hire, returning to his alma mater. He led UCF to a undefeated record and acclaimed national title.
They won that national title. They went to Disney World.
If you go to Wikipedia and look up the 2016, 2017 national champion,
yeah, the 2017 national championship, it's on there.
Yeah, it's on there. It's listed.
Yeah, and the NCAA recognizes it.
Yeah.
So it's there. They went to Disney World. Fucking won.
Yeah. Well, the campus is like a mile away from Disney.
I know. Also, I think something to be more impressive, that is more impressive about that particular team, is literally the year before they didn't win a game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
if Scott Frost could do that with UCF, who's probably had recruiting rankings in the 50s to 80s in that area, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I assume that's where UCF is. Why can't he do that with Nebraska in a lesser part of the Big Ten, the Big Ten West, a weaker side? Why is he not able to even go 500? He hasn't had a 500 season yet.
I don't know what it is. I think honestly, I think it comes down to Nebraska as a whole, and the program just isn't where it used to be. And I think that their move to the Big Ten was a mistake. I mean, I do think that, because I think
financially it might not be a mistake, but
but the thing is, I do think if Nebraska was in the Big 12, they would be competing for Big 12 titles. That's how I feel about the team.
Would they though?
I do. Yeah. I mean, Because, and the reason for that is because is Nebraska better than TCU? Probably.
I
I do
mean,
think that
over the last 10 years, I'd say TCU is like pretty significantly
But
better.
it's you can't compare it as much because they're not recruiting the same guys anymore. Now Nebraska is recruiting the guys in the Big Ten's footprint, and it's a lot harder to get those guys to leave the Big Ten, the original Big Ten, for Nebraska. Whereas Nebraska in the Big 12 was a high recruiter for the Big 12's footprint.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a difference. They're not an as established name in the Big Ten areas. And I think that is what makes it hard.
Well, it's so much farther west than all the other Big Ten schools.
Yeah. It makes it very difficult for them to recruit the same talent that Ohio State is recruiting, that even Wisconsin is recruiting.
Yeah.
Because one, Nebraska is not exactly a hotbed for recruiting.
No.
But when Nebraska was on TV every week in Texas, well, then they're going to be able to recruit Texas because
people in Texas know who that is.
Yeah, people are watching Nebraska games in Texas.
Yeah.
Whereas it's harder to bring kids out from Ohio to go to Nebraska when people from Ohio have only heard as Nebraska as being a bunch of corn. And it doesn't help that your mascot is the Corn Huskers.
Yeah.
So
okay. So we'll get into Rutgers more in the Big Ten East. But Rutgers is kind of in a similar circumstance in terms of recruiting as Nebraska, as they're on they're in the East Coast. They're not really in the Big Ten footprint, as you say. But yet Greg Schiano has gone in there and turned Rutgers around, and he's been there 2 years now, and he's had
1 season.
Is it 1 season? Okay, well, there's going into his second year then. So 1 season in, he's already had a better season than Scott Frost has had 3 years with a lesser recruiting class, guys he didn't even recruit.
Yes, and I think that Greg Schiano is a better coach.
Yeah,
that's one thing, but also the New York and New Jersey recruiting area is actually really solid as compared to Nebraska's recruiting, like in-state recruiting, not great. But Rutgers is able to recruit New York and New Jersey, even Pennsylvania, pretty well because they're in very close proximity to that. And we don't hear about New York and New Jersey being like a hotbed for recruiting, but it's a solid area where there's a lot of people playing football. And when you get more people playing football, you're going to get some talented guys. And so I think that that's the difference between Nebraska and Rutgers.
Makes sense.
Scott
Frost, he needs to turn it around quick, or he's out of a job. And
I like Scott Frost, but I don't know if him
need to get results.
I don't think him at Nebraska makes sense, and I think it's going to take a really special coach at Nebraska to make it make sense.
Hello, Kitty.
My cat has joined the chat.
I'm going to be unlucky now. Black cat has crossed my path.
All right. Well, you want to get into our
last team?
Last team.
Yep.
The Badgers of Wisconsin.
The Fighting Barry Alvarez's.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm actually really impressed with Nebraska's recruiting class. And for once, I actually think that there's a possibility that, like, talking about competing for the Big Ten West for them is just disappointing. Like they're talking about winning the Big Ten.
They should be yearly what Ohio State is in the Big Ten East. Wisconsin should be the dominant team in the Big Ten West, and they've taken a step back these last couple of years. Like they're not, or 3 years really. I'm looking at their record the past 3 years: 4-3 in 2020, 10-4 in 19, and 8-5 in 18. 13-1 in 17 was their last great season.
All right, they've taken a significant jump in recruiting from last year to this year. And let me just kind of go over this real quick. Nationally, they are ranked 15th.
Okay.
Last year, they were ranked 26th.
Any quarterback in this recruiting class? Because that's what they fucking need.
Well, no, not in this recruiting class. But you got Grant Mertz, who I think is actually going to be a solid quarterback for them. He was inconsistent this past year because of COVID.
He's a freshman, right?
Yeah. And I think that they can build around him. They have 1 5-star, 4 4-stars, 15 3-stars. It's a solid class. In the Big Ten last year, they were 5. This year, they're 3rd. And their average ranking went from 87, well, like 0.87 to 0.89, which in the grand scheme of things is massive.
Yeah.
That's a massive jump, those 0.2 points. And I don't think that, like, I can't say enough about how much of a jump this recruiting class is. I think this is their best recruiting class ever. I'm not sure on that, but
you know more than I would.
It's a very good recruiting class. That being said, they got to do something with it, which they are known. Wisconsin in general has been known for coaching up players and making these 3-star players act like 5-stars.
Yeah.
They've done it for years. But I agree with you. They need to have a quarterback that's electric. They need to have someone under center that is going to change things for them. Like Russell Wilson when he was there.
What I was just thinking.
That program was fire. It was fantastic. Yeah. They were fun to watch. They're really good. And it helped their recruiting. I think Wisconsin is probably in my opinion, if I was like getting recruited and just going up the schools, it would be my 3rd rated school that I would want to go to, just based off their facilities, their stadium, their crowd. I think that it's Ross Ade Stadium, or no, that's
Purdue's
stadium. Whatever the name of their stadium is, the Bounce House, or that's UCF, but jump around. They do jump around at the 3rd quarter. Is a fun stadium. I think
Camp Randall.
Camp Randall. That's
it was gonna bug me because it was
on
the tip of my tongue.
I don't know. They gotta win. They gotta start winning this. I don't know. I don't think Paul Chris is really in the hot seat at all. I wouldn't say he is, but I will say that their fans are hoping for a Big Ten championship and maybe an undefeated year where they make the playoffs.
Yeah, I just don't with their current style where they have the best running back, it seems like, in the country every year, and obviously
style of play doesn't work.
No,
but
that's an issue with a lot of these teams, especially in the Big Ten West, where it's just never going to realistically, like Iowa. We just finished talking about Iowa. That's never going to work in terms of a national championship or playoff.
Did you watch Wisconsin's first game of the year this past year against Illinois?
Probably not.
Granted, I know it was against Illinois. So that's taking this with a grain of salt. But I'm pretty sure Grant Mertz threw for like 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like
it was like familiar now because their second game was against Purdue.
And he was out with COVID protocols.
And I got happy about that because I was like, hey, and Purdue had started off 1-0 and we were feeling good.
Yeah.
It's like, we could beat Wisconsin. And then the game.
And so I mean he showed flashes of that throughout the rest of the season. Never got quite back to that, and I think that there's a reason for that. But if he's able to light up a Big Ten defense like that, I think there's a chance that team can get behind that and have a quality offense that isn't just running backs.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Paul Chris is trying to take the team.
I agree with I agree with that sentiment, that the fact they just need a quality quarterback to actually be able to run that system. They just haven't had the guy who, and they've had to rely on the Jonathan Taylors, and even going back to like the Monty Balls and all these great running backs that Wisconsin have had the last 20 years. They just haven't, except for the year with Russell Wilson. But
yeah. I mean, that was an exciting year, and it's proof of concept that Wisconsin can work.
Yes.
So
until then, they're just going to be in everybody's way.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have for Wisconsin.
All
do you
right.
have anything to add?
Nope, I do not. I think that'll pretty much finish it for our state of the conference in terms of the Big Ten West. All right, so that's going to be it for today's show. Couple things to look forward to over this next week. You'll probably be hearing this podcast on Tuesday. So sometime later this week, we're going to be having a top 10 Heisman winners of since the year 2000. So look for that later this week. Probably Friday, I'd say. And then next week, stay tuned for State of the Conference for the Big Ten East. We'll be getting to the Big Ten East next week. And then we're looking at going into some of the group of fives for the next State of the Conferences in the weeks to come. So stay tuned for that. We both appreciate all you guys watching and listening. Make sure to you share with your friends if you liked it. If you watched it on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to us, comment down below with your thoughts. But that's going to be it for us. So thanks you guys for listening or watching.
Have a good one.
We'll see you next time.